Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Michael. I'm going to be your host for around about the next 45 minutes. Today we're looking at CH50 accounts. Specifically, we're looking at the company archives. Now, company archives is a relatively simple feature, and it's just making sure that your understanding of it is right. So we'll be trying to explain the ins and outs of it, but quite a small feature, but really useful. Now, just before we get started, we'll run through a little bit of housekeeping, just for those of you that may be new to our webinars. So now for the webinars, you don't need a microphone, first of all. If you've got one and you do enable it, so you'll just find that you're muted automatically. So we won't be able to hear you. You won't be able to mute yourself during the session. So nothing to worry about there. But if you've got any questions for us though, you can still submit those, but you will need to type them in. To do that, you just need to click the little speech bubble icon, which is on your taskbar down the right-hand side of your screen. That'll expand the panel, and you get access to that box in the bottom right-hand corner where you can type your comments and your questions. Remember to click send when you do that. We are helped out today by Matt, and Abby is online as well today. So they'll be in the background there trying to answer any questions that you might have. So keep them busy, keep your questions and your comments coming. Anything you're not sure of, or if you see something in the background, pop it in there, click send, and we'll try to pick up as many of those as we can. I'll try and get involved with a little bit of that here and there as well. If anyone wants a copy of today's slides, we try to keep them nice and simple today as well. With it being such a relatively simple topic, then you can download a copy of the slides during the session. Do take that opportunity. You won't have that option afterwards, and they're not provided on the email either. So do click that link during the session if you want that. You will find detailed information though on everything we cover in webinars. You'll find that available from our help center. Now, you will receive an email afterwards as well. You'll get that round about an hour after you finish, and that will include a recording of today's session. So if you need a bit of a recap or you want to share it with a colleague, watch out for that one. But it will also contain links so you can register for our other upcoming webinars as well. Our timetable currently runs up to the end of February. So it'll include a link to that one. Again, they're all free to attend. There's loads of sessions, loads of topics relating to this one as well. So this month we've got a bit of a theme going for clearing records, which sort of relates to running your year end as well. So things like clearing audit trail, clearing customers, suppliers, nominal bank, invoices and orders, etc. That's in this month. In February, we're going to be running another one of our accredited badges, and that will be looking at the banking area of the software. So loads of sessions for that one. So if you are interested, watch out for that follow-up email, follow the link and get yourself registered. The other link that you will get is to our recording. So if there's any sessions you've missed previously, you're fairly new to webinars and you think, actually, they're a good idea, where have I been? Why have I not been attending these? Obviously, we try to help you learn as much about your software as possible. Then there's well over 100 recordings on that list. So do make use of that as well. So that's just a little bit of housekeeping. Let's get stuck into the webinar itself. So this is what I'm going to be covering in today's session. So a little bit of background as to what an archive actually is, why you might use it, when you might use it, or when you might create an archive. And then we'll just get stuck into some demonstrations. So how you go about taking an archive, really easy option, that one. How you go about accessing the archive and what you can do once you're in it. So we'll be showing you that in some live demonstrations. We'll touch on a few common questions that we normally get relating to archiving. So we'll pick up on some of those, and then we'll touch on differences as well, because there's always a lot of confusion between what an archive is, what a backup is, and what Clear Audit Trail is, and what those options do and when you would use them. So got a little bit of detail on that as well, just to try and clarify a little bit, because that's normally where the confusion lies. Just at the end, we'll explain more about the additional support, and then if there are any outstanding questions at that point, I'll join in with some of those, and we can run a few additional demos here and there if needed. Right, so let's get started. So just a little bit of background first of all for company archives. It's an option that's been around for a long time now. So if your company's been using Sage for that long, you may find that even if you've just created an archive as part of your year end, you might have loads of these archive companies listed. And an archive is basically, it's a read-only copy of your data. So when you create an archive, and we'll show you that in a few minutes, but when you create an archive, it takes a copy of your data as it stands. So as it appears in your program at that point in time, all your historical information, current information, even if you've entered future information, it's an exact copy of your data as it stands. And that obviously includes your logon details as well. And logon details is one of the key points. So when you access an archive company, you'll need to remember whatever the logon details were at that point in time so you can access it. So it is just a read-only copy. Now, with it being read-only, it does mean that you can't add any new information, so you'll not be able to enter new transactions, create new records. You can't edit or delete transactions. What you will be able to do, though, is you will be able to remove certain information. So when GDPR was introduced, if you remember back when everyone had to, you got all those emails about do you subscribe to this and consent to this, and you were getting millions of emails every day about that. When GDPR came in, we sort of catered for that as well. So as well as from your live company, you would be able to access an archive, and if you get that GDPR request, you can remove certain personal information from customer records. So you still have that capability. Now, in archive, it will automatically be saved to your data path, and that means you've got data, nice, easy access to that as well. You would access it directly from within Sage 50 Accounts, which again you'll see in the demo. So no need to restore. It's basically on tap. You can log into an archive at any point. So it means that you can have a look at that information as it stood at that point in time, which is, I suppose, one of the key benefits of why it creates an archive as part of that year end. You can get back to that point in time. If you'd forgot to do certain, maybe you need to redo a profit and loss report from that financial year based on that data as it stood at that point, you can still do that. You can see all the information, you can access your customer records, run reports, etc. But it is a snapshot of your data when the archive was taken. So if you do anything else in your live data, it doesn't update the archive. It's just the archive is as at that point in time. That's the key to the archive. So anyway, we'll get stuck into some demonstrations. So firstly, we're going to look at taking an archive. Now, when you do take an archive, it can be created from 3 different areas in the software. So one is when you run a month end, it will give you a little option to do that. Most commonly, you might be aware of it from when you run your year end. So again, little tick box for that one. If you've attended a year end webinar, you may have seen that one. So that's probably the most likely time that you are going to run one, but you can also do one at any time. So if you're maybe about to clear your audit trail or delete a series of records from your live company, what you might want to do is, as well as take a backup at that point, you might want to take an archive so you can readily access that information should you want it. Now, it's worth noting as well, and you'll see this in the demonstration, that when you take an archive, a lot of people think it's going to remove information, and it doesn't. The archive is taking a copy of your information. So no changes are made to your live company at that point. It doesn't get rid of all the transactions. We'll come back to that one a little bit later on when we talk about things like Clear Audit Trail. It doesn't remove all records or anything. It literally is just taking a copy of your information as it stands. So what I'll do is I'll share my screen at this point and we'll look at how you go about taking an archive. So you should be able to see my desktop. I'm going to be working in version 31 today. If you run an older version, of course, it's pretty much the same. The steps will be exactly the same as well. Maybe color scheme and things like that, or navigation options that you might see in the background as I work through the software may look a little bit different, but largely speaking, it's going to be exactly the same as what you're about to see. Right, now I mentioned three areas where you could create an archive from. So if I went into Tools, and then Period End, and then we have the Month End option, what we tend to find is that the, excuse me, is that the majority of people don't bother with the month end option. You would only really use that, I suppose, if you're running, use like things like prepayments option, the accruals option, or if you use fixed assets and depreciation. If we pop into year end, which is probably where, as I say, where you're more likely to have seen this option, so tools, period end, and then year end, and you'll see you've got this option here. It will be ticked by default. Initially, when this option was first introduced, it wasn't ticked by default, and you had to remember to tick it as part of that. So it's one of those you had to make a conscious effort to tick the box if you wanted the archive, rather than deselect the box if you don't want it. But I would always say leave it ticked. Now, in the year end area, you also, as well as the tick box that's ticked automatically, you also get this archive location option. So the path will be set for you. It always attaches to wherever your data is actually held. You've got your description in there, which it will pop one in there by default. So you can see on this set of data, it's saying, right, it's for the year end for 2023. It's a bit of an older set of data that I'm using. And then we've got an archive folder. Both of these can be changed, but you can't change the location itself. And the other place, I'll come back to the year end in a moment. We'll just let it run through so you can see it. It creates the archive, etc. I'll just cancel out for the time being. The other place that you can access the archive option from is by going into Tools, again, Period End, and you've got the option to archive company here. And again, it opens that same window that we just looked at. Now, because we've gone in via the Tools Period End, even though it's the same set of data that I'm working on as it stands, gives it a slightly different description this time and a slightly different archive folder as well. But essentially achieving the same thing. It's going to take a copy of your data at that point in time. So what I'll do is I'll just quickly run the year end on this set of data. As I say, that's probably 99%, if not nearly 100%. That's where everyone will create the archive. So tools, period end, and then year end. I'm just going to accept all of the defaults in this instance. So I'm not interested in the year end options in this instance for the purpose of this demo. If you're not sure about year end, then we do run separate webinars on that. But I'm going to leave that box ticked. I'll leave the archive location as it is as well. And then I'm just going to click run year end. So I'll click yes to that prompt. My year end is really quick because it's a tiny set of data. Some of you may have even attended one of the sessions that we're on where we've run a year end and seen this before, where we do touch on the year end a little bit, sorry, the archive a little bit. So it just tells me that the year end's been run. Again, for yours, if you've got a big set of data, that may take 5-10 minutes, possibly even more. Just depends on sort of I suppose, your computer environment. Do you work across a network, or you just stand alone, how much data you have, etc. So anyway, ours is done. We just OK that. And it now tells me that on this set of data, the financial year starts January 2024. So it was previously January 23 to December 23. And that's the archive created. Now, accessing the archive, really simple as well. So as you can see, nothing complex there. All I had to do was leave that box ticked to actually create the archive. Now, if I just pop back to the slides for a moment, just want to quickly mention about accessing an archive. So nice and easy from within Sage 50. Now, an archive can only be accessed from within Sage 50 itself. So a little bit different to when we're talking about, if we talk about backup and Clearwater Trail, etc. a little bit later on. An archive, it will be available and easily accessed just by going into File, Open, and then Company Archive. So you just follow that through. We'll see that in just a second. Now, it will then give you a list of any archives that you currently have. So again, if you've used Sage for a long, long time, you might have loads of these. But when you select your company, what you will have is you're going to be prompted to log into the relevant archive. Now, remember what I said earlier. When you create that archive, it backs up all of your data, and as part of that data, your usernames and passwords are part of that data. So you need to know, to access that archive, whatever the logon name and password was as at that point in time. If you don't, for whatever reason, do get in touch with our support team. And as long as you can work through the data process, we will be able to sort of give you the password for that. So you must log in with whatever your username and password was when the archive was created. That's probably the key. So if you've got really old archives, that's where you may think, oh, actually, I might have forgot what that password was. If you do, get in touch with our support team. Anyway, let's have a quick look at accessing an archive and give you an idea of what you can do within an archive as well. Now, I'm still within my live company at the moment. So you can see this one is January 2024 as the start date, and there's 3,680 transactions in there. Now, this is my live company. So if I go into customers, and let's just go into a blank record, and what I'll do is I'll put 1MC, so I'll put my initials in there. I'll just put Michael as the company name, and I'll save that. So this is my live company, my live set of data. You can see it at the top here. Now that doesn't impact my archive company. Remember, the archive was a copy of the data exactly what it was as at that point in time. So similarly, if I go and enter into bank accounts in my live data, we'll just do a quick bank payment. Again, it doesn't really matter what it's for. I'll just choose a random nominal code, put test in the details, and we'll do £100. And I'll just save that transaction. Now I do get a message about date outside financial year because the set of data we're working on, we've just advanced it to go into 2024 on that one. So it's quite a while. We probably should have run the year end on it a while ago. So we'll just click yes to that, nothing to worry about, and that's it done. So on this one, my live data, we've got a new customer, but we've also got that extra transaction on there now as well. So that's my live company. And it's worth noting at the top, it tells me the software that I'm using. So in my case, Sage 50 Accounts Professional, and then it's got your company name there. So in my case, it's Demo Management Reports. Now to access the archive, we mentioned it was nice and simple. You went into File, into Open, and then you've got an option called Company Archive. So we'll just click yes to that standard prompt about having other windows open. And then it lists any archives that you might have. So this is where, when you had the opportunity to give it a description, this is when you could put in something so you can recognize, if you select that archive, what does that archive relate to? We can see the date of when the archive was created, which it's got obviously today's date in there, but it's got that description in there. So I know because of that description, it was created as part of the year end, in this case for the year end 2023. Now all I do is I select it. Again, you might have loads of these. So I click open. It'll prompt me for, now it may prompt you for both the username and your password, depends on how you've got your software set up. I'm just going to click log on. And that takes me into my archive. Now, you might be sat there thinking, well, what's different? Well, we can now see that we're in January 2023. So that's the start date for that archive data. So before we ran that year end, or as part of that year end, it archived the company and then it ran year end. So that archive, the financial year was set to January 2023, and it had 3,641 transactions on it. I can still see all the customers that I had at that point in time. I can't see that 1MC customer because that was in my live company after the archive was taken. I go into transactions as well. I can't see that final bank payment that I put through with the details of test. I can't see that because, again, that was entered in my live company, not in the archive. So the archive is that snapshot. Now I can still run reports. So if I wanted to go back to an archive where the financial year was set to whatever, so let's say, let's say I have been processing throughout 2024 and 2025, and I need, for whatever reason, I need to go and have a look at whatever the P&L was as at the end, well, based around this archive. So if I went into nominal codes, I can choose the P&L option, I can preview it, and I can run those reports. So I've still got all of the balances, I've still got all the transactions, the records, whatever was included in my data at the point when I created that archive. So I can see all that information. I can go into transactions, I can see the information. I can pop into customers and suppliers, and I can get into their records as well. And again, I can see all of that information of how it stood as at that point in time when that archive was created. So again, see all the information, run reports, etc. Now, it could be one of the uses that you might use an archive for is, right, I'm about to delete loads of records from my live company. So you might be in a position where you think, right, I've got loads of old customers in my live company. I want to get rid of those. You've got all that information saved within your archive should you need to refer back to it. Similar for transactions, if you're thinking about clearing your audit trail. If for whatever reason you cleared your audit trail and you've got, like, let's say you've retained all of your current year's information plus maybe a previous year, but for whatever reason, totally out of the blue, one of your customers is saying, right, well, we need a list of transactions from 3 years ago, and actually from your live company, you've maybe cleared some of that information. Well, if you've got your archive, you can just log back into that company as at that point in time, and then you can view that information. So Carolina, your question there. So just quickly asking there. So Carolina's question: if the archive doesn't remove data from the live data, what's the difference between accessing the data in the archive rather than just changing the period in live data? Well, in your live data, there are some restrictions. I'll come back to that one in a moment with regard to reports. But again, in your live data, you may have removed information from that live company. So, customers that you've never bought anything from you in the current year or the previous financial year, in your live company, you may have got rid of them. So if they don't exist anymore in your live company, but in the archive, you've still got their information, maybe their transaction history as well, should you need it. Your list of invoices in your live company, if you attended Matt's session this morning, where he covered removing things like old invoices that you no longer need to be listed within your live company. If you needed to reprint one for whatever reason from 2 years ago, you could go back to an archive when that invoice was included in your data. So again, it means that your live company, you're keeping it as efficient as possible, keeping your data to a minimum that you can get away with. And if you needed that older information, you could log into your archive to get at that information. But obviously there are some restrictions when it comes to reporting as well. So if you needed a P&L for 2023, for instance, I can't really get at that information from my live company because I'm in a different financial year. Right, okay. So I'm still in the archive. Obviously, it still tells me at the top here. If I go to this new edit option, and let's say I now create, I'll pop in a different one this time. We'll pick on Matt. So I'll just call it 2 Matt. And if I try to save that, you get this message. It tells me this option isn't available when you're working with an archive data set. So remember, it's a read-only company. I can't make changes. I can't add new records. Similarly, I can't delete records. If I go into the bank accounts area, for instance, if I choose the bank payment option in here, again, I'll get the same message. It's not available to you. It's an archive company. It's read-only. So I can view the information, I can report on the information that's there, but I can't make changes to it. It's there for reference purposes. Now, to get back to my live company, my live set of data, all I would do is into File, Open, and then you've got an option called Company Data. And that's me back to, once I log in, that's going to mean me being back into the live company now. So just now, it doesn't mention archive at the top, just says demo management reports. And you can see here as well, we've got the January 2024 as a financial year start date, and tells me that in this set of data, there's 3,681 transactions. So if I went back to transactions, you'll see that bank payment that I entered just a little bit earlier, where you've got that, the one called test. So that's company archives in a nutshell. Keep your questions coming though, and we will try and pick up as many of those up as we can. Right, quick question from Lorraine there as well. So Lorraine's just asking with regard to customer account numbers. If you're accessing an old customer record, if the number is reused in future years, so the archives read only, etc. I suppose you're just asking generally, is it going to stop you from using that account number again, or would it let you use it? In my company here, if I've let's say this one as an example, this A1 design. Let's say I was in a position to be able to delete that one from my live company. It's still in the archive, and that would have the reference A1D001. But if I've removed it and I've deleted that specific record, it means that that account reference doesn't exist in my live company. So it would mean that potentially I could reuse that in the future if I needed, and that would have then nothing to do. There would be no link between that new account, which may be for a total different customer, and the one that's held in the archive. There is no link between those two sets of data, and it wouldn't stop you from reusing that either. But again, the whole point is you've deleted it because you don't need it. Cassia, you mentioned there, can you open an archive that was made using an old Sage version? Absolutely. If needed, when you access that archive, if it's there, it will convert that for you. It will just do it automatically as you need to access it. So when you're going into File and then Open and Company Archive, you'll see it does list the version number. So if I'd had one in there where maybe I'd been using and I'd created on, let's say the version 29 version of Sage 50 accounts, it would list that. And the first time I access that, when I'm using version 31, it would convert it into the version 31 format just so that you could use that. So it would update that format if necessary. I believe that goes back all the way to version 16. I may be wrong on that one, but it's going to be there or thereabouts. Hope that makes sense. But literally, you might have a great big list of them on there. Right, let's head back to the slides for a couple of minutes. Give you a chance to pop some more questions in if you have. We could always run through some more demos as well if needed. But again, some of the common questions that we get asked. So first one, after archiving, can you then delete old records that are no longer required? The answer is potentially yes, but archiving is just part of that sort of overall process. So if you're thinking about removing old customers, old suppliers, nominal bank, maybe getting rid of product records. It just forms part of that process. You'd probably archive before you try and remove any records, just so you've got a copy of that should you need to, that you can refer back to. But things like deleting old customers, suppliers, you would probably also need to run through the clear audit trail to remove the transaction history from their accounts before you go about deleting them. But remember, archiving doesn't, by default, it doesn't remove any information from your accounts. It is taking a copy of your data as it stands at that point in time. The other one, and this normally comes from anyone that's familiar with the clear audit trail option. Do you have to specify a date when you run an archive? As you've seen when we ran through that year end, we didn't. The only thing that was specified was the folder name and the description. So we didn't have to specify a date. It's not like clear audit trail where you're saying, right, I want to get rid of information prior to a certain date. It is literally just going to take a copy of all of your data as at that point in time. Third question, and it's again a very common one, can you select certain areas of the software to archive? The simple option to that one, answer to that one is no. It will take a full copy of everything in your company data. So it doesn't matter whether it's historical information, whether maybe you've entered some future transactions or your current information, it takes a copy of everything. It's a bit like if you do take a backup is a copy of everything. It's not just your latest information, it's everything as it stands. So archive is similar, but an archive, and we're going to come on to differences next, an archive is readily accessible. So when you're working in Sage 50, you can just quickly switch into the archive as you've seen on that one. You can easily access that information if necessary. So those are just some of the questions that you might be thinking, oh yeah, I was just about to ask about that one, see if you're typing it in. So those are very common, those. So let's pick up on some of the differences then. So again, just a recap of what an archive actually is. It's creating that read-only copy of your data, which can be easily accessed, almost like just switching companies. I want to move into the archive at that point. So file, open, company archive, log into it. Remember, the process doesn't remove any of the data from your live company. Backup, on the other hand, it does take a copy of your company data. So the idea of backups is, I suppose, security more than anything. I'm sure you've all come across it where you've heard of things like, maybe you've experienced it yourself where you've had a virus or you've been hacked and you can't get at your data, or for whatever reason your server it disintegrates overnight, or your PC, or even just your laptop stolen, and actually you just run on that laptop only. So you take backups and you keep them away from that PC. You store them in a different location so that if needed, you replace your laptop, put your software back on, and you restore your backup back into it and you're up and running again. So archive is a full copy of your data as it stands, but so is a backup. Archive, nice and easy to access that. It's on top basically. Whereas with a backup, you can only use that by restoring it into the software. Now, if you restore it into your live company, that backup would overwrite your live data. So you need to be very careful if you're doing that. So obviously once restored, it takes you back to that point in time. Now, if you're using version 31, your backups can actually be restored into the practice company. So if you were just wanting to run a report, for instance, and you didn't have an archive, you could restore your backup into the practice company and then quickly take whatever reports or find out whatever information you require. And then once you close out of your practice company, it essentially resets that practice company. So that's a great resource that's being introduced on version 31, that one. So subtle difference, archive backups, they both take full copies of your data, but with an archive, it's there, it's present, and you can quickly log into it. You don't need anyone to log out while you do that. With a backup, it takes a copy of all of your data, it saves it as a compressed file essentially, and you can only use that by restoring it. The clear audit trail, again, just to try and differentiate between that a little bit as well, we are going to be running some separate webinars on clear audit trail. We ran one earlier this week. I think we've got one next week as well. But that process, that's the one that would get rid of your older transactions. So if you want to get rid of transactions from 3 years ago or even older, that's where you'd use your clear audit trail option. You would remove things like transactions from the customer accounts, the supplier accounts, your nominal codes, your bank accounts. It's going to remove that sort of that activity history. And with that, it would also reduce the size of your data files as well. Again, we've got a separate session on backups next week, or backing up, and also we've got an option. We should have another session on clearing audit trail. If you can't attend those, again, the links will be included so you can watch recordings. That will be on the follow-up email. So just to quickly summarize what we sort of covered today. So again, sound like a broken record at times here. Archiving, it does create that read-only copy of your data. It's all of your information. It doesn't remove anything. You can archive maybe prior to running your month end as part of your year end. Probably that's the most common, but you can do it at any time. So if you're partway through your financial year, then that's when you think, right, actually we're going to have a clear out of all of the older information. Take an archive just before you do start removing information. So you do that at any time. Tools, period end, company archive. Remember that key, an archive includes your user login names and passwords that were in use at the time of when that archive was created. So that means in my live company, if I go in and I log in as, let's say, manager, and let's say at the time when I created the archive, my password was Michael321, for instance. If I, on my live company, if I then update that to Michael421, that I would use that to log into my live company. But if I try to access the archive at that point, I need to remember what my password was at the time, because that forms part of your data. Again, if you're locked out of one for whatever reason, maybe you didn't have a log-on name at the time, do get in touch with our support team. So if you've got a really old company and you think, well, actually, the people that created that archive and worked on the accounts at the time, they don't even work here anymore. Any problems accessing it, get in touch with our support team. So the point of the archive enables you to view your historical data. You can edit, you can make certain changes to your records. So you'll not be able to delete records, or I should say add records as well, rather than edit. So it's that read only, but it means that you can run reports on it as well. So no adding of new data, editing and deleting transactions. It's there really for reference purposes. We've included a few links on there as well for backing up your data, archiving your company data as well. If you've downloaded the handout, you'll be able to get direct to the relevant Help Center articles. That information is nice and easy to find though. You'll find it available from our Help Center. Vinka, your question there, I'll quickly pick that up. Vinka's just asking, so will the customer and supplier list stay the same? And will it only archive the data for that year? So again, this is what I mean about it's still a lot of confusion around what an archive is, what it does. An archive, whatever your data looks like as it stands, it is an exact copy of that set of data. Imagine you're taking a copy, you're putting that to one side, your live company, just as it was. You can then go and make whatever changes you want to it. So yes, the customer and supplier list will stay the same. But archive-wise, it's not just your archive for a certain period, it is everything as it stands. So if you've got 10 years worth of data in your live company because you've never got rid of all the information, it's all of that would be included in the archive. It copies it all, literally everything. So every record, every transaction, every invoice, every credit note, everything, it copies it all. I hope that makes sense. Again, if you're not sure about something though, you just, for whatever reason, it just hasn't clicked, remember you will receive the link to the recording on the follow-up email. That will be in around about an hour's time. But if you're not sure, you've got any questions now, then just fire them in there. And again, Matt and Abby are still on hand, and we'll try and answer those questions for you. I've mentioned the Help Centre, so nice and easy to access the Help Centre as well. Just open your browser and head along to sage.co.uk/help. There's loads of detailed information in there, whether it's support guides, webinars, little videos that you want to watch. And if you can't find what you're after, it'll prompt you for options for getting in touch with our support team as well. And it'll prompt you, depending where you are, for the best way to get in touch with our support team. So do use it. It's a great resource, the Help Centre. For our upcoming webinars, I mentioned this at the beginning of the session as well. So throughout January, we're concentrating on sort of tidying up your accounts, almost having that spring clean in January. So getting rid of older information, how you go about removing your older transactions. So we're looking at that process of clearing records and those processes that go into that overall task of tidying everything up. But in February, we are introducing our second or next new badge, and it's for the banking area of the software, what we call Banking Excellence 2025. So if you all want to earn your digital badge, when you get your follow-up email, have a look at the registrations, scroll down that list. In fact, I'll just show you. I'll bring up my browser and let me just show you. If I go to the registration page, which this is the link you'll be provided with to this page. Just give that a chance to load. So this is where you'll have registered for our previous or even today's session. So this is where they're all listed. So we got version 31 sessions. We're still running those ones. Company archives, that's today's session. Again, we've got tomorrow, we've got a session on clearing records. So topic for that one is looking at the stock area of the software. Next week, we're looking at backing up your data, two-factor authentication. We've got Matt's going to be running a new session on the data management tool, something that we've never covered before on our webinar. So that's a brand new session. Again, if you want to attend any of these, just click the register now and pop in your basic details. But if you do scroll down, see how far we have to go. So we get down to February 2025, and this is where it explains a little bit more about the Banking Excellence badge. So it does mention that you need to attend any 6 out of the 8 different topics we're running. Plus, we run a quiz as well. So you must attend at least 6 of the 8 different banking related topics. Plus, you must attend one of the quiz sessions as well to qualify for that badge. But where we've run them previously on VAT, report design, etc., they've proved very, very popular. So things like simplifying bank transactions, managing customer receipts, supplier payments, bank reconciliation area. We've got loads of topics, so do have a look through, see which ones interest you, get yourself registered. There'll be 2 dates available for each topic. Again, if for whatever reason you can't attend one of those sessions, recordings will be made available, but you do need to attend them in live to qualify for the badge. But links are going to be included on your follow-up email. Right, we look like we're just about on top of all the questions there as well. So thanks to Abby and Matt for that. So let me take the opportunity just at this point then, just to thank you for coming along. I hope you have enjoyed it. Got a few comments about that, so thanks for that. If you've got any feedback for us, let us know what you think, good or bad. Pop it on the survey. It should pop up as you leave that. It should take about a minute to complete that. So any thoughts, ideas, maybe topics you'd like to see covered going forward, let us know. So pop it on the survey, and that'd be really appreciated. Your follow-up email that I've mentioned with the links so you can register for those webinars, and also so you can watch recordings as well. That'll be with you in around about an hour's time. Right, questions all covered, so we'll end the webinar just at that point. Many thanks for coming along. As I say, do take that minute to complete the survey, and hopefully we'll see you on some other sessions very soon. Many thanks.